Hello, so today we're going to be attempting to prune our young apple trees. So these 4 apple trees here are 2 years old now, and it's the perfect time to start pruning. And this will be the first ever time that they're going to be pruned. And also this will be the first time that I've pruned apple trees as well, so this is going to be fun. So there's 2 reasons why I want to try and prune my apple trees. And the first one is due to how the apple trees grow. Now, if apple trees never get pruned, they can end up growing into all different types of shapes. And as the tree gets older, it leads to more and more congestion. So here behind me is a good example of what wild apple trees look like. And as you can see, look how wild these apple trees have actually grown. They have got no structure to them at all, and they're really wild. And if they were to grow any apples in the middle, you would have to battle all the branches to try and get in to grab the apples. Then it gets to a point where the tree is so out of control, it can then lead to further problems. It can then become sustainable to more fungal and bacterial diseases, making the plant weaker, and that's not what we want. And now the second reason why we want to prune our apple trees is because of these, and that is crop yield. Now, if we manage to prune our apple trees correctly at a young age, we'll be increasing the amount of apples we can get. And that's because if we're able to train our apple trees at a young age to develop strong and healthy branches and a very good growing structure, when they start producing fruit, there'll be lots more of them, a lot bigger, and it hopefully continue growing more apples as the years go on, and hopefully the tree won't die. So I'm going to try and explain as best I can my thinking through on how I'm actually going to be pruning these apple trees. And the cool thing is, all 4 of the apple trees that I've got growing are all growing completely different to each other. So this is going to be quite cool going through them all and seeing how we can prune them to try and maximize the efficiency of them. But before we start doing anything, it's going to be important to get ourselves a nice pair of pruners, and also to make sure that we sterilize them. Now we can do this with 70% rubbing alcohol. And the reason that we do this is because if we've used these pruners before on a different type of plant, and that plant does have some fungal diseases that we don't know about, we could end up transmitting it to our apple trees. So it's best off to keep all your tools clean, as we don't want to be spreading anything to our new apple trees. So the way I'm going to be growing these apple trees is through the central leader method. So what that means is we're going to have one main branch that's going to continue to grow up into the air. So while we've got the main leader growing in the air, we're then going to have 3 or 4 other branches growing out sideways like so. So in theory, you're creating like a Christmas tree effect like that. And it's these branches here that are coming out to the side that will end up making our fruit later on in a couple of years' time. So before we start determining what parts we're going to prune at the top, let's start closer to the bottom of the tree. Now, if we look at the bottom of the tree, we've got loads of little branches at the bottom that are starting to form. And all this is all going to be a lot of wasted energy when the plant starts growing again in the spring. And we also want the base of this plant as well to be completely free of anything growing. So our first protocol is to completely get rid of all the small branches at the bottom of this tree. And in doing so, we want to try and prune it as close as we can to the tree without damaging it, like so. And just slowly start removing all these little shoots at the bottom. Alright, I'm quite happy with that. So now, all the energy will be going up the tree now and producing new growth at the top, instead of trying to prioritise and making this grow at the bottom. Right, so my next step is to determine which one I want as my leader. It's quite easy to see which one is most predominant, which is this one here. But it's actually shorter than the side shoot here. But we're still going to be using this one as our main leader, as this one here is coming out way too wide for my liking. The only problem about this leader here is this little kink here. Now, like I said at the start of the episode, apple trees do kind of grow very, very weird if you leave them alone. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing a pruning cut now, where we're going to be pruning this off somewhere around here, so then we can have a stronger leader going up into the air. So what we're going to need to try and find is a outward facing bud to prune to, and this bud here is the one we're going to be using, and that's because the direction of where the bud is facing is where the direction of the tree is going to be growing. So we're going to use this bud here, the branch will then start growing this way and then upwards, where if we pruned it here on this one here, the branch will then start growing up this way, and because it's already kinked, we then start putting a bit more weight onto that one and it won't grow straight at all. So we're going to be doing a pruning cut to this bud here. And it's also important to remember as well, when doing pruning cuts, is to try and do them at a 45-degree angle. And this is because it should stop this branch from having any water damage. If it was to rain, the water would hit the top of this branch now and then just fall off. So this is what they mean when you do a 45-degree pruning angle. So now we're going to be determining how many branches we're going to be keeping. And we can do this by looking from the top. We don't want branches that are all going to be growing in the same direction.
And as you can see here, this one, and this one here are all growing relatively in the same area, while this big one here, its only competition is this little one underneath. So now I have now come up with the decision to keep this big one here, keep this little one here, and keep this one as well, removing the awkward one that's in the middle and this little branch underneath here, which is directly underneath this big branch. So we're doing a thin and cut again, so we want to remove them straight from the base. And now you can see clearly on why I've kept these 3 branches.
And it's because all 3 of them are growing in complete different directions. So they're not going to be in contact with each other or end up crossing each other, and it also shouldn't be blocking out any light to each other either, which is very important. But now we're also going to be pruning the remaining branches that we've got here, because we want to now promote growth on these branches as well. So another reason why we do actually prune our plants is because it's a stimulant for growth. So that's the reason why we're going to be pruning these branches here, is because when we prune them, we're going to send a message to the plant that we want these branches to grow bigger and stronger.
So when it comes to pruning the branches, you typically want to prune off about 1/3 of the length. But sometimes this will make it awkward because you're trying to find the right bud to prune to.
So the same rule applies when pruning buds on these branches here. We're going to want to try and prune to a bud that's going to promote growth in the right direction. So if we end up pruning to a bud that's lower down but facing more inwards, the plant will then start growing this way, and it might end up becoming a competitor to the main leader branch, and we don't want that. And also we don't want it too high up, because then it might have too much weight on this branch and it could end up damaging it. So personally, I feel that this outward bud here is perfect because it's going in this type of angle, a nice 45-degree cut, like so, and that one is pruned, ready for next season.
So these 2 branches should be fairly easy. We just got to find ourselves an outward facing bud that's in a good direction. We'll get our snips. That should now try and help promote growth this way, and this one here, like so.
So that is the first one pruned, and I'm quite happy about that. That went quite well. It looked a bit scary at first with loads of little branches all coming out, but we've got it down to our main 3 branches coming off and our main leader. So now on to our next one. Right, so this one's going to be a little bit more difficult because there is a general rule when it comes to pruning, and that is you shouldn't take off more than 1/3 of the complete growth of the apple tree. Now the apple tree that we just done, I think we've just got away with that one, but this one, like I said, it's got a lot more going on, so we'll assess it once we remove all the bottom shoots of the plant.
So that is all the smaller branches at the bottom gone, but now we are left with a sort of a conundrum going on here, as we've got these 3 branches here which are spread out perfectly, so when they start growing they won't make contact with each other, but I feel like they're not high enough on the plant.
Now I'm a little bit stuck with this one, to be honest, because I don't know whether to prune it here, somewhere here, and have these branches, or maybe go for something a bit more taller and maybe prune some of the branches at the top and do it that way, as I feel that these are a little bit too low. So what I'm probably going to do is maybe keep these 3 at the bottom for now. I'm going to prune them as if I would if I wanted to promote a growth from them. I'm going to cut some of these off of here, and I'm going to keep a couple branches at the top as well, and then see how it grows next year, and then readjust the pruning process again. Because like I said, it's a shame because these branches here are in perfect position.
So when it comes to the top of this one, you can see we've got a clear leader, which is this one here. So we'll prune that one back, probably about there. So if we look at it from the top, we have got 1 big one there, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's too many there. They'll all grow and then get in each other's way. So I'm thinking about getting rid of this one here and this one here. Even though these ones are small here, they are in a good position to grow outwards away from the rest of the branches. So now I'll just prune these to some outward facing buds.
That is the second one done, but this one's going to be a bit of an experiment. We'll see what it looks like this time next year, and we'll go from there to see how we want to progress this one a bit further. Right, so our 3rd tree is probably going to be the easiest one that we're going to be doing.
And that is because this tree has got hardly any outward growth at all.
It's not a bad thing that this hasn't produced a lot of side shoots, because if anything, this tree is more structurally secure than the other ones, as it's able to stand upright a lot better. But that's the good reason why we're pruning our trees today, is because we do want to promote sideward growth, so pruning this one should help it develop more, as unfortunately the side growth that it does have is too low. It's too low to the bottom of the plant, so we are going to have to remove it all. Now there is something I want to address as well. You guys might be thinking, why am I doing this? I might be basically cutting off any fruit and buds. These trees are only 2 years old. There is no fruit and buds on any of them because I have checked before doing this video. Hopefully this is going to promote new growth, which will end up producing fruit buds later in the future. So now it looks like I'm just growing one big stick. But as you can see here, we have got signs of growth of new branches coming out. But because they're so small, I'm not going to be able to do anything with them. I'm just going to leave them. So instead, I'm just going to end up cutting a little bit off the top to promote some more growth going upwards. So we'll find ourselves an outward facing bud. Just chop it off like that. Alright, so that is the third one done. I'm just hoping for next year that this tree starts producing more sideward growth. Otherwise, we're going to have a little bit of a problem. Right. On to our last one. So out of the 4 trees, this one is the one that has grown the most. Not only is it grown a lot taller than the others, it has also produced more side shoots. But I got a feeling pruning this one might be a lot more easier than the others. Now with the other trees that we had, we didn't have these types of problems. We've got branches here that not only got damage on them, so we need to get rid of those if you see any damage, but we've also got these branches that are actually hanging lower than they should be. So in the future, if they did start producing fruit, they will get weighed down a lot more. Any branches that are pointing downwards, you're going to want to get rid of anyway. So yeah, it's a good practice to get rid of the branches that are facing downwards, and they should be facing vertical between 45 and 60 degrees. But lucky enough, these branches here that are facing too low, because they are the lower parts of the branches that we don't need on this tree. So we'll just get rid of them. Okay, so that is all the growth at the bottom done. So now let's determine which one we want as our central leader. So as you can see here, there was a bit of a struggle sometime this year between these 2 branches. So in theory, you could use any one of these 2 as the central leader, which is quite a shame really, because these 2 branches here on the side are actually perfect because they're going off in a nice direction. And if this one would have grown a little bit more backwards like that, that would have also been perfect. Because you could have had these 3 as our branches, and you could have had this one as our main leader. But it does mean these 2 other side shoots that we've got further down the tree, we're going to have to get rid of. So we'll do some thinning cuts. But basically the whole tree is all pruned apart from the top. I'm going to keep these 2 side ones. I'm going to keep this one as the leader, and I'm going to potentially put something in between here to try and push this branch out a bit more. Because I do like the look of this branch here, and I think it'd be very good to have the 3 main branches already in place. So I'll prune these off first, as these ones will be fairly easy to do. So 45, and an outward facing bud, there we go. The leader, cut there, like that. This one here, there's a nice outward facing bud right there. And now we've got to try and think of something we could do to fit into there. Oh god, oh no. I've just ruined that, haven't I? And now I'm going to have to prune it. Oh, what a shame. So, that's the top of that one. I am so annoyed about that. I did not want that to happen. If I wasn't able to bend it, I was going to have to cut it off anyway. So, that is the 4th tree done. And hopefully this one produces more shoots at the top. Because at the moment, the top does look good. Like I said, this is probably the best tree that I've got growing at the moment. So hopefully next year, this one can continue to grow. And within a couple years, this should hopefully produce some fruit for me. So that was the first ever time that I've ever pruned apple trees. Now, I hope I've done it right. I did do a lot of research on it because I want these to grow very healthy and produce fruit later on. But if you guys got any advice on pruning apple trees in the future, then let me know. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed, and hopefully next year these apple trees will grow now and not just die because of my pruning.